My name is Henry McClendon. I'm Director of Community Engagement for the IIRP and have the privilege of serving as your MC for this great event. And I just want to say welcome. We're so thrilled that you are here with us today. I do want to let you know it is the IIRP's practice when we have public meetings to do a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement when hosting our formal meetings. So we want to take just a moment to acknowledge that the ground that we are occupying right now is the ancestral home of the Ojibwe, also known as the Chippewa, and Indian community, and it's part of the Anishinaabe Confederation, which includes the Odawa and the Potawatomi nations. The IIRP, our commitment to the Ojibwe Nation and the Anishinaabe Confederation is this. We'll continue to do our work to promote human dignity and the use of restorative practices to repair harm and to restore relationships. This is ultimately key. The indignities that the First Nation people and that others have experienced is in part because of broken relationships. And so we are committed to helping to promote human dignity and creating the environments in which harm can be repaired and relationships can be restored. So this leads me to making another very important acknowledgement. There are two incredible women whose visions have resulted in all of us being here today. And I'm going to just ask them to stand. One of them is Dr. Linda Kligman. She is the president of the International Institute for Restorative Practices Graduate School. Linda, where are you? Way over there. There you go. Thank you. The other person is the distinguished Mrs. Kenyatta Stevens. She is the president and CEO of Black Family Development Incorporated here in Detroit. Thank you. It was their vision and leadership that have us all in this room today. Now, we are in the city of Detroit. Say hello, Detroit. Oh, y'all didn't sound like you mean it. Say it again. That was a little better, but I want the folks out there to hear it. One more time. Now you got it. We are honored to have with us today the Deputy Mayor of the City of Detroit. Yeah, give him a hand. I'm going to ask him to come. Just personally, I want to thank him. Before he was Deputy Mayor, he was in the Detroit Police Department and was a leading advocate for the work of helping build relationships between the community and the police. Now he's Deputy Mayor.
Good morning. So, Dr. McClendon has already said, hello, Detroit. But within every community, of course, we have, slang and we have local culture. And so my Detroit folks from the east side to the west side, from wherever else, would say, what up, though? What up, We got any folks in here from New Orleans? Anybody? I was in New Orleans like 3 weeks ago. I did a prison tour. And one of the things that they tried to get me to do, and I could never get it right, is you heard me. I tried, and I said, I'm just going to have to stick to the up north thing, but I was like, so to my brother right there from New Orleans, you heard me? On behalf of Mayor Mike Duggan, of course, and myself and the 700,000 plus residents of the city of Detroit, we welcome you. We welcome you, and for me, it's more than just a regular welcome. I am so pleased to look into the audience and see your faces because I helped write the letter of support to get you all here. So let's give me a round of applause. I retired from the Detroit Police Department. I did 27 years there. And the only reason that I bring that up is I got a chance to see firsthand throughout my career what violence really looks like. And so you'll hear from Chief Wright later during the conference, but he'll tell you, we grew up together in the department, but most violence, the homicides, the non-fatal shootings, just any violence in general, it really results from conflict. I talked to a homicide detective and I said, what's really going on? And he said, shame. When somebody feels, you all know this one word because you hear it multiple times when we're talking to young people, when they feel disrespected, at that point, in order to regain what they feel they lost as dignity, violence has often been taught in the culture that that's the way to do it. So, how do we combat that? Restorative practices, what you all are doing. And so that's why I'm so pleased to have you here in the Motor City, to be able to learn, to see what we're doing, to exchange ideas. And this is so important work. Throughout my lifetime, Detroit has always been known. We've been known as the Motor City, Motown. So I definitely want you all to check out the Motown Museum, which is excellent. So we're known for our music. This is a sports town. We are crazy about our sports teams. Go Lions. The Lions are back. No SOL, no same old Lions. We just showed Green Bay. Anybody here from Green Bay? This is a foodie town too, so the food is excellent. We have the #1 river walk in the country. I bet a lot of y'all don't know that. 2 years in a row. Guess what else we got? Did y'all know that Detroit is like the pizza capital? So my folks in Chicago and New York, you all, yeah, we got Detroit-style pizza. Somebody from Colorado asked me, what y'all put in it, motor oil or something? It's like, But check it out. So while you're in Detroit, you got to get you some Detroit-style pizza. So Little Caesars, that's where the hot and ready started. Got to thank Mike Eigen folks for lowering the price of pizza across the whole country. We have to, because with that $5.30, that's what we call it in the city of Detroit, $5.30. Because after you add the tax, it's $5.30. So let's thank the Illegals for making everybody else lower the cost of pizza. So we got our beautiful LCA, which is the Little Caesars Arena, where our Pistons and our Red Wings play. That is the busiest arena in the whole country. It's programming there all the time. So it is so much to do. It is so much to explore in our beautiful city. Many of you have heard things about the city, have read about the city, but I can tell you that the city of Detroit, we're booming. We got skyscrapers going up. Back in 2013, we did go through the largest municipal bankruptcy in the country. Do you know, since Mayor Mike Duggan has been in office and working with the corporate and the philanthropic organizations, we have balanced our budget 10 years in a row. We have been in the black. So from an economic standpoint, we're doing well. We got the lowest unemployment rate that we've had in the city of Detroit in like 20 years. We're doing some amazing things. But here's the thing. Guess what? Somebody say what? Violence is still a problem. Detroit, every year, regardless, going back 20 years, we're always in at least the top 3. I can't remember if we ever made top 4 when it comes to homicides. We're always like right there. We'll battle it out with New Orleans. Sometimes you'll get, Memphis. Sometimes, Chicago is known for violence and gangs, but when you look at a per capita ratio, we beat Chicago every time. They're not even in the top 5. So my cousins and friends from Chicago will say, well, no, surely we're more violent than Detroit. I say, nah, I'm not bragging on that. I'm not proud of that. So what I'm saying is, this is why this conference is so important. And also, I have an and approach. We invest in law enforcement. We just gave our police officers a nice raise, $10,000 per officer. We're investing in technology. But we have to also invest in the people, the grassroots organizations that do this work in restorative justice, restorative practice. So I want to thank Kenyatta Stevens from Black Family Development. I want to thank Henry McClendon. And I want to thank everybody who had anything to do with getting this conference here. And what I will tell you is I actually went through a course of restorative practices. And I will tell you that when I have conflict at my house on the holidays, I actually get them in a restorative circle, and I'll pick up an ink pen or something. I say, okay, now it's your turn to talk. I need you to hold this. And I will tell you that it actually works. I have been a practitioner and have solved it. So I'm not just talking about something. I'm talking about implementing it, and I know that it works. So I want to, once again, before I leave the stage, thank you all because you are saving lives. I know that you're doing it. So from around the globe, from my folks that came from outside internationally to the United States, from my folks that came from around the country that are here, I just want to say welcome to the city of Detroit. I want you to have a wonderful time. I want you to spend some money. I want you to contribute to the tax base. I need y'all to go out there and spend some money, too. You know, Detroit, the residents of the city of Detroit will thank you for that. Have a great time.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So who's in the room? This is important. I want to acknowledge all of you. I want you to just take a moment to look around the room, and what you're going to find is that, there are 450 registered guests. We had to shut off registration. There are 12 foreign nations that are in the room. There are 36 U.S. states represented in the room. We have educators, human service providers, elected officials, healthcare providers, neighborhood and community leaders. We have police officers, people from the criminal justice and faith communities. We have moms and dads and kids. We really want each of you, and I forgot, we also have just great people that other people listen to and trust. So thank you for being here. But I also want you to know we really want you to get to know each other while you are here. And there are two ways of doing that. One, if you have not done so already, please first put your phone on mute, and then also make sure that you have signed into the CVent app. The schedule is there. We have to make some updates from time to time, so you'll get those automatically. The list of people who are participating, who are here, is there. So we want you to get to know each other. And then lastly, how many of you did, first of all, how many of you, this is the very first time that you've attended a restorative practice conference? Raise your hand high. Wow. Thank you for being here. So the other thing that I want you to do, included in your app, was the journey map. A journey map looks at what has brought you to this place. For some of you, for all of us, probably there was some really good stuff that may have happened, some stuff that was not so good that happened. I'll just share quickly. For me, you may not be able to tell it, but I destroyed the myth that all black boys could play basketball. I was horrible. Sports didn't work for me, so as a teenager, as a preteen, I got involved in politics. I was going to school board meetings at 13. I almost lost my mind. No, but that got me into politics, which led me to serving as the executive assistant, the personal assistant to the first black mayor of the city of Detroit, Coleman Young. Left there, worked for Prison Fellowship, learned about restorative justice. And again, I can trace back to what's brought me here. So I want you to think about the people, the events, the experiences that have brought you to where you are now, both some of the good and maybe some of the challenges, right? And then I want you to share that with other folks. Before you leave here, throughout this conference, I want you walking up to people saying, would you share a little bit of your journey with me and allow me to share a little bit of my journey with you, right? Because I want you to leave here not just having had a conference, but having had built relationships. That's what this is all about, all right? I'm going to invite our panelists up for our Faith Matters conversation. Our moderator is Ms. Kenyatta Stevens, and our panelists, you can come on up. Our panelists are Dr. Percy Ray Ballard, Lynette Wright, and Hedda van Lieshout. Let's give them a hand as they come. Families are critical to, if you're going to have a thriving community, the measure of that thriving has got to start with the families. You can have beautiful buildings, you can have great institutions, but if the families aren't thriving, you really can't claim a thriving community. So we have a team of experts here that we are thrilled that they will be able to share their insights with us. Ms. Stevens, it's all yours.
Testing. Hello, Detroit. Good morning. So, I'd like to see, by a show of hands, how many of you have a mother, father, daughter, aunt, niece, nephew, grandparent? Show of hands. Thank you. That's everybody. So that's pretty universal, right? Okay. You got here, right? Good. Another show of hands. How many of you have someone that you call when the most wonderful thing possible happens? Bring the person to mind. When the most wonderful thing happens, you know you pick up the phone. How many of you have someone to call like that? Okay. Next show of hands. How many of you, when you're feeling really worried and you just need someone to give you a word of encouragement, to give you the oomph you need to do that next thing, think about who it is, and then how many of you have someone like that? Raise your hand. Okay. Last question. How many of you have someone when you watch the TV show you know you shouldn't have watched? It made you angry or it made you sad. And you're like, I can't tell anybody that except for so-and-so. How many of you have someone like that? Okay. So what we have, whether it's biological, whether it's through heredity, whether it's through people who are close because we know we can pick up the phone in the midst of our highs or in the midst of our lows, you know what that's called? Say it. Family. That's right. So we live in a world where we can define that the network around us that gives us support, that's critical for our everyday functioning and well-being, is known as, what is it? Family. That's right. And so while we represent in this panel various expertise, various fields of study, we also represent, each of you in this audience, family members that you influence, that you serve with, who, just like each and every one of us in this room, also have a family. So we're going to talk a little bit about how in the process of building our societies, healthy, thriving societies, family matters. So say it with me. Family matters. That's right, that's right. So welcome to the theme of the day, which is family matters. Very well. And as Henry said earlier, the soil upon which we find ourselves in this very room was Ojibwe soil. And so it seemed fitting that as we think about family, we begin our conference with a Native American quote on family. Here it is. The Creator gave to us the family, which is the place where all teachings are handed down, from the grandparent to the parent and then to the child. The children's behavior is a mirror of the parent's behavior. Knowing this, I realize the importance for each human to build strong and balanced family. By doing this, I will break the cycle of hurt and ensure the positive and mental health of children, even the children yet to be born. So from now on, I will dedicate my priorities to rebuilding family. Another quote. Dr. Marianne E. Neifert is an American pediatrician and recognized as an advocate for children's health. She's affectionately known in the media as Dr. Mom, and Dr. Neifert has been quoted as saying, "The family is both the fundamental unit of society as well as the root of culture." Sir Winston Churchill, the British statesman, soldier, and writer, who served as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom twice, is quoted as saying, "There is no doubt that it is around the family and the home that all of society's greatest virtues are created, strengthened, and maintained." From the Latino community, we learn familia, donde la vida comienza y el amor nunca termina. That means family, where life begins and love never ends. And in 1972, Singapore's founding Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, is quoted as saying, "It is the hard framework of basic cultural values and tightly knit Asian families. It is the family system that have enabled us to achieve what we have done today." These quotes about families represent 5 distinct cultures on 4 different continents, yet they communicate one shared theme. And that theme is family matters. That's right. These quotes remind us that family is a universal family that transcends culture, language, and geography. In the same manner, so does restorative practices, and that's evident by your presence in this very room. So together, we begin our journey to explore the universal ties between restorative practices and family matters in order to build the societies in the communities that you and I each live and work. And so we are joined by 3 experts in their respective fields to share why family matters in the context of restoring societies. So would you please welcome our guests? To my right is my dear friend Lynette Wright. Lynette is the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Director for Children's Services, covering Detroit and all of Wayne County, a large footprint in this local area of the U.S. She has 30 years experience in child welfare, working with children and families, and expertise in foster care, protective services, and permanency planning. She has 25 years experience as a clinical social worker and a child therapist. She believes when realistic interventions are applied and professionals collaborate across both private and public systems, families' lives can be improved. Next to Lynette, we have Hedda van Lieshout. Hedda is the managing director of the Eigen Kracht. Centrale. We had to practice that together. Where she has been since 2005. The Eigen Kracht Centrale is the organization in the Netherlands responsible for family group conferencing and restorative conferences across the country. Eigen Kracht means one's own strength and power. The name emphasizes that people are able and empowered to make their own decisions and their own plans, and that together with their network of families and friends, they can be successful. Her organization is powerful. It actually elevates the voices of families to influence political and policy decisions throughout the entire Netherlands country. And then we have Dr. Percy Ray Ballard. You're going to hear me refer to him as Dr. Ray. He earned that doctor. Dr. Ray is a scholar. He is a psychiatrist who graduated from Harvard Medical School, where he also completed his general psychiatry residency. He is a 10-year expert in internal family systems therapy. He uses it regularly in conjunction with medication management and intimacy counseling within his private practices in the Boston, Massachusetts, and Tennessee areas within the United States of America. In addition to his private practice, Dr. Ray supervises at a nonprofit clinic, and he is the medical director, if that wasn't enough, right? And he is the medical director of Black Therapist Rock, an organization serving Black therapists across the United States. Amazing panelists, aren't they? So this first question I'm going to ask each of you, because your journeys professionally have intentionally been one where you've chosen to support and empower families. Yet you still have a very cross-section of professional backgrounds. And this audience, likewise, has similar varied backgrounds. And so I'd like you to begin by answering this question. Would each of you please share 1 to 2 practical strategies for engaging families restoratively in a manner that helps them contribute to improving the settings in which our audience members work in or on behalf of families?
Okay, thank you, and thanks for the great introduction, Kenyatta, and thank you for having me here. I feel so honored to be in the middle of all of you and to be here, so thank you. 1 or 2 strategies. I think there's one thing that's most important, and I've learned that from my work the past 20 years, is that the best strategy is to trust families. So we have to start by believing that families know best. Families know themselves. They know who is around them that counts. You had great questions. We all raised our hands. We need those people. The families need those people. So if you start by trusting families and having the conviction that families have networks and know best, that's what your strategies have to aim at. You have to widen the circle of people by asking them, who's important to you? Who at this moment might be thinking about you? Who do you trust? And then you give these people a voice. You don't exclude them, you include them. And I don't know who the family of somebody is. I don't know their friends, but they know. And I have to trust that they know the people that should be around them. So widen the circle, then ask that circle, what's important to you? And give them the opportunity to make their own plan. Leave control with the families. It's their family, it's their situation, it's their life. So they should be and should remain owners of the solutions. So I think for all professionals, but for all of us, it is important to realize that every person has a group of people important for them. And whenever they need something, whenever they need help, when there's some trouble, those are the people that should come first and that we need. So I think those are some strategies, but not just strategies for work, strategies for life. As was said before, it's not just happening in... I think I said enough because of the mic. That's a great sign. Thank you. That's a good way of stopping.
Testing. Did it work? Yeah. Well, Kenyatta introduced me as an expert. I am not an expert. I'm a perpetual student. What I'm an expert at is staying on the line of policy and law so that I don't get fired. And why that's important is because policies and the laws that govern our work is not always good for the families. And one thing I really learned from one of the young people years and years ago, we removed him from his parents for neglect and abuse. And he told me, and we moved him maybe 9 or 10 times in a year from foster home to foster home to foster home. And he told me one day, he said, you know what, I could navigate my home. I knew how to avoid my parents when they were high. I knew how to avoid getting in trouble at home. I can't navigate foster care because I don't understand these people. And that stuck with me because we took him from a home. It wasn't the best circumstances, but was that the right thing to do? We spent thousands and thousands of dollars moving him from place to place. Should we have invested that money with his family to keep him there and to support that family? So I think it's very important for us to think hard when we have to make these tough choices about whether a child's safe or what their needs are, and how can we better serve that family and that child in a way that doesn't disrupt everything. Because we all have faults. Maybe we don't do drugs, but we do something. So it's important to know that we can manage things differently. Extreme actions aren't always the answer. We want to keep folks together. We need to draw in families and their support systems. Families have support systems. Pookie and Ray Ray are fine if they can help that family get from point A to point B. And I think we need to look outside of our traditional thoughts and see who supports these folks. Who in the community can come and talk to this mom and dad? Who can help that parent when they're off their meds? So I think just how we go about our jobs day to day is really, really important. How we view families, we need to look at a different way. We can't continue down this way we're doing. It's not working. But that's why I'm here. That's why I'm excited to be here. And I'm glad to hear from all of you because we're always looking for how to do this job better.
Thanks everyone for having me.
Testing.
So we'll try again.
Ooh, wow.
I guess two things come to mind. One is embodiment. That's just something that has been screaming to me since you asked the question. When you asked those people, the people that we name who have our back and have our support, like, can you think about those people that you brought to mind and how you feel in your body when you think about those people, and just how much it can ground you and how safe you feel around them. And knowing that, like, our body tells us when we're in an environment where we're safe. Our nervous systems are talking to each other. Even in this room, there is a shared nervous system among us. We are all affecting one another. And so being aware of that at all times, you can, one can be, several ways that it can help us. One could be sitting with a family and just like, okay, I feel a tension coming up in my body right now. Does anyone else feel that? Okay, well, what does that mean? What's going on in your body? What is your body telling you right now? And so, just using that as a tool can help us to know when we're safe, when we're not safe, and if we're willing to speak it and be honest about what's happening inside of us, it can foster this connection. When we talk about restoring, we're restoring connections in the nervous system. So that's one thing. The other thing is a word that I learned at a training recently, de-shamifying. And that is, I guess when I think about, what the deputy mayor said earlier, that at the bottom of a lot of this violence is shame. We have learned to control one another through shame. Sometimes we learn that through our families, but we definitely learn it in society and how we respond to harm being done. And let's see, shout out to, is it Dr. Keisha Allen, who yesterday, yes. What a phenomenon. So learning yesterday that, when we're fostering relationships and community, it starts with fostering community in oneself. And so as a psychotherapist, that's my business of helping people. It's kind of internal restorative practice here, helping people to have a good community within themselves. Because when you learn not to control yourself through shame, when you learn to address yourself with love and those parts of yourself that you're ashamed about, when you learn to love and get to know those parts of yourself, that is when you also look at the outside world and can say, hey, we don't have to shame one another. We can be here for one another. A quote that I love, every action is either an expression of love or a crying out for love. And the only reasonable way to respond to either of those is lovingly. So just, some thoughts about how we can bring that to families and bring that to one another. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Lynette, this next question is for you. As the director of a very large public system, share your feedback on how public systems and the community should work together to help restore families, particularly families who are in crisis.
Well, I think one thing that's very important is that we all have to realize we can't do it alone. The Department of Health and Human Services can't just go in the home and remove children and think that that's the answer. It's a community issue, and we need to seek help from the community. So we all wrap our arms around folks who are in crisis. Frequently, one of the things that I've been doing a lot in the last 3 years in my current position is to reach out to the police departments, to social agencies, to the schools, to the hospitals, to form a continuum of care for families. Because we all know our families usually cover the gamut of systems. Somebody's dealing with police issues, somebody's dealing with medical issues, somebody has mental health issues. So we can't work in a vacuum. And I think my biggest push has been to try to bring us all together, all of the huge systems together, so that we're meeting and we're talking about the problems and talking about how we should be communicating better to provide that care for these families in a manner in which is conducive to healing and not fighting against each other. You know, you have 5 different systems telling people they have to do 5 different things. And if I'm at my worst, how can I do those things? We need to be conscious of that, and we need to make sure that we're providing the guidance and the connectivity that our families need.
Thank you. So for some of you, we know that you've actually come with teams that are cross-system representatives in your community. And so we want to welcome you to take a moment to speak with Lynette during the conference, because there may be some pieces of nuggets that you can take with her as you think about your own systemic changes. Hedda, the next question is for you. As an executive who collaborates with families towards system-level change, you have witnessed how the voices of families have produced policy-level changes. What small but impactful changes do professionals need to make in our systems-level work to ensure that the voices of families are heard and acted upon so that we have system-level improvements for the greater good of society?
Thank you. Thank you, Kenyatta. I think the first important thing, besides the trust that I spoke about earlier, is that we have to start asking different questions. I see many professionals in my country who ask to families when they need something, who can help you? And then I see that's a very big threshold. Is that what you call? You make it very difficult. And people say, I don't have nobody. Or, okay, I might have somebody, but I don't want to burden them with my problems. Or they say, okay, of course I have family and neighbors and friends, but they don't know all the details of how I'm doing, and I don't have the courage. So what we ask families, we ask them, who's important for you? Who do you trust? Who do you want to be part of your life? Who can think along, not who can help? Because it's very difficult to accept help. But it's not very difficult to accept people around you who can think along of the things that are important for you. So the very first question is, who belongs to you? And I think it's important that we realize that families are engaged. We often say we should engage families. I don't believe it's up to us to engage families. I believe it's up to us to realize that families, and family meaning in the way that you presented it, a wide family. For some people, it's a very important group of neighbors. They belong to the family group, and it's up to us to realize that these groups are engaged. They are worried if something goes wrong. They know the family, so it's important to keep them on board, to keep them with the family. And it's also important for us to realize that we have our own values and beliefs, and we should be aware of those values, and that we should not judge the others by our values. I mean, I believe that families know what's important for them, and I trust that if they have widened the circle, they know best what should be happening for them. Yeah. Can I give one small example? Because I was thinking of Henry's question, our journey, and I was thinking about that question this morning, and my journey, my professional journey, actually started when my life started, because when my mother was pregnant with me, together with my father, they decided to start a foster home. And there was an organization that was looking for parents for 5 children, and brothers and sisters. And it was a beautiful concept. The idea was that they bought a home for the children, and they were looking for parents to join them. And if it wouldn't work out, the children would stay there, and the parents would have to move out. So my parents said, okay, we think that's a great idea. We would like to try it. But we will only start it if we ask the children who are important for them. And the organization said, we're not going to do that because they still have a father. Their father was still alive. Their mother had died when the youngest one was born, but their father was still alive, but he had an alcohol problem. He was an addict. And they still had a grandmother, but the grandmother was very angry with all the organizations. So the organization said, keep them out. And my parents said, we can't, because they're part of their lives. And I'm sure other people are part of their lives as well. So if you want us to become their foster parents, we start with a circle. And the organization didn't support that, but my parents had the circle. And it was their father, their grandmother, and other aunts and uncles, and my aunts and uncles as well, because it also was a change in our life. So we had a big circle, and my parents asked their father, is it okay if we are going to live with your children, and if we are going to be a family together with you? And the father said, well, of course, I'd rather take care of them myself, but you're the first people to invite me, so maybe you're a bit okay. And so they made a plan together, and we started, and they became my brothers, my foster brothers, and we still are part of each other's lives. And what I've learned from this, one of my foster brothers told me a couple of years ago, this circle was the only reason that we succeeded in being a family together. Because I had the intention of being a rebel, as I have done for years in all the institutions that they had put me in. And I had every intention to be like this because I didn't want to be here. And now my father and grandmother said, it's okay for you to be here. And we will be part of your life, of your daily life, and the life of Hedda and of the others, made it a success. So what I've learned, starting my life like this, is that you should always include and never exclude. And that we need everybody around the person. So that's my part of my journey. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing that. So, Dr. Ray, that story was one of resilience. And as a psychiatrist, you see resilience every day. Families truly are resilient. So as a psychiatrist working at a national level, how do we work with families restoratively, particularly when those families have often been exposed to barriers, like Hedda's example, violence, poverty, trauma, mental health? How do we still work restoratively with families and get them engaged?
I think, the answer, or one of the answers is in the reason for that resilience. And it's because none of us do it alone. We can't. Families are resilient because families are communities. And those families are even more resilient when there is a community around that family. You know, the bigger that, we can call a community kind of a chosen family that weaves its way around a family. And that family helps to support the internal community, the internal family within a person. So that connection causes resilience. So I think our role here is when we see a family struggling is to, based upon wherever we are in proximity to that family, be a community. That's our role, to be part of that community for that family. And what does that mean? It depends on where you are. I mean, for me, as a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist, it is kind of saying, hey, harm is happening. What's happening? And what are the needs here? Sometimes forming community, bringing a family together in the room and saying, hey, what are the challenges? How can we come together and talk about what's happening lovingly? And can we see the love in the room? Can we affirm that, hey, we're all here because we care about each other, and we may see things differently, but that's natural because we're different human beings. Of course we'll see things differently. We're viewing it from different places. But just like we have two vantage points in our head, our two eyes that help us to see greater depth, we all can be that for one another, one another's eyes that we can share our vantage points and help lead to greater depth. So I think that's what I've got for that.
Thank you. Lynette, one aspect of restorative practices is putting into action a commitment to prevent and reduce harm while at the same time building community. How do we better serve children and families to stop the school-to-prison pipeline and reduce family separations in our individual spheres of influence?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question. Why did you give me that one? But
Your system is built, right?
I think that, like these two people here have stated over and over again, it is important to include that family in their recovery or their healing. And as systems, I think that that's something that we're moving towards doing, is saying, hey, how do we involve that family? Who does that family think is important? And how can we get from point A to B? And in the past, systems have acted as we're the parental figure. Oh, something's wrong with your family. We're going to take your kids, or we're going to do all these different things. But we have to let folks define who they are and how they can grow and how they can improve their lives. And I think that's a very important thing. And for us as big systems, we all need to come together and talk about the services that we provide and how can they better mesh together. Because when we put these pressures on these families, what are we really doing? We really have to ask ourselves the question. Like I said earlier, we all have policies, we have laws we have to follow, but if you have to go real close to the edge, it's okay in order to make sure that family has what they need. I also think an important thing about what we need to do as systems is better train our staff. I think it's important for us to continually make sure that our staff persons understand how to communicate, how to assess families effectively. I think it's important for us to think about training our folks about their biases. I see so often where people bring their own personal biases and ideas in the room, and they make a decision about families. That's not fair, nor is it right. So we're responsible. We're responsible as professionals to figure out how to provide better service, and it runs the gamut. You have to make connections with community folks that can come in and help. You have to make connections with those families. You have to make sure you're training and you're exposing your staff to a better way of doing the job. And you have to be open as a professional to say, my way may not be the right way. Maybe I need to talk to Sally about doing it differently. It is hard for most of us, particularly when you're leaders. We're used to do this, I want this done. Is that always the right way to address things too? We have to back up sometimes and take a look at the bigger picture. And sometimes we have to sacrifice our own personal ideas or what we think will work to try something different so that we can move the process along. But we really, really need to commit ourselves to doing a better job at serving folks and bringing in the community as a part of our resource community.
What I think is powerful about what you shared is that you've really borrowed from the mindfulness that Dr. Ray spoke of earlier. And you've spoken to what Hedda spoke about earlier. Families, we ask them to do the hard work. But Ray is saying we need to be mindful about when we feel uncomfortable, about something going on in our dynamic in the room that just doesn't feel right. Taking it to add to what you've shared is that as professionals, we need to be mindful when we see dynamics that are not right in a room. To say, wait a minute, let me stop. Let me not follow the script. Let me not lean on what it is that I was trained to do, but instead let the humanity come forward and start asking the question, is it me? Am I the only one who feels uncomfortable in this space? Or can we pause before we move on? So thank you. See, that's why she had the hard question. Dr. Ray, everyone in this room is here because they believe in restoration of individuals, and public or private system intended to build societies. So help us. How do we learn to ask the better questions, like Hedda said? How do we help families by asking the right questions to feel more empowered so that systems can begin to take more seriously feedback from families?
Gotcha. So how do we learn to ask those questions? What comes to mind is from Resmaa Menakem's book, My Grandmother's Hands. If y'all haven't read that, my goodness, read it slowly. It's an intense one. But what comes to mind is switching the question, because I have worked in a number of systems, and not all of them have been that way, fortunately. That when someone shows up, it's like, what did they do wrong? What did this family do wrong? The question is, what happened to you? If someone is not, if a family or an individual is not functioning optimally, it is because there's been harm that happened. And so can we ask, what is the harm that's happening? Can we help give them a better experience of the world than the one that they've had, so that they can then begin to feel empowered to ask questions, to know that this is a safe space. Let me ask you the questions, and let me ask you to ask me questions. What do you need? What do you need from me? What am I not seeing? When you give someone a place where they can feel safe to ask questions, and when you can ask, what questions should I be asking, and find out what wisdom that they have, what have they learned from their experience, then it just gives a greater sense for the conversation to happen, because it is a much bidirectional conversation. And to help people feel like they can be part of that conversation, I think is very important.
Thank you. Hedda, today's theme and this conversation highlights that in order to build communities, family voice is essential. Families matter. Help us think about families in the framework of tomorrow's theme. Tomorrow's theme is collaboration matters. So how can we take with us the understanding that family matters, and then widen the circle of thought leaders that are often asked to sit at decision-making tables?
Thank you. Nice question. I think the first thing to realize is that family matters and collaboration matters, and we should collaborate around families. So what I've learned from so many family groups in the past 20 years is that they also want to collaborate. But we should give them the opportunity to make their own plan, and then they will say, we need this and this and this. And then the organization should look at the plans and say, okay, they ask us this. So they should collaborate around a plan made by the family. That's very helpful. What I see in the Netherlands, a very small country, but my organization works outside the system. So we facilitate family group conferences, restorative conferences for family groups, and community conferences in neighborhoods. And the facilitation is being done by independent community coordinators. So they're not professionals in the word that they get paid for being, for example, social workers. So our coordinators are just people like all of us. And it's a fantastic group. We have 300 of those coordinators, and they speak 65 languages, meaning they represent, as we represent here, what was it, 12 countries, so many states. They represent so many countries, cultures, languages. And I think it starts there. So if we want to collaborate, we start by asking questions and trusting that the plans that they make are the plans. So we work outside the system, which is helpful because actually the families matter. It's their plans. And then we try to collaborate with organizations by saying, this is the plan. Do you want to collaborate around this plan? And families don't think in social domains, or they make a plan for the children, for the parents, for the grandparents, for the neighbors. So it's easy to collaborate around their plans because the plans give the answers. And we should, I think, work with families to give them the opportunity to make their plan, work with professionals to show them how helpful it is if we work this way. I speak to so many professionals, and when they really understand this vision, they feel this trust, it makes their life and their work so much easier. But they first have to let go a little bit the idea that they are the ones that they have to make the plans. And once they do, it makes their work lighter. They feel a burden fall off their shoulders, but it makes their work more pleasant. Because literally they say, now I collaborate with the family, and they want to work with me because I first asked them. So I think collaboration matters, but not just for the collaboration between professionals. We have to collaborate with families.
But you elevated two really essential points. The first one you elevated was that we really need to recognize the professionalism that families bring in a space that we as professionals cannot offer. And recognizing that they need to be paid and employed, right, as an equal footing at the table. I think the second thing that you really elevated was really a fundamental concept of restorative practices, that we need to be doing things with families as equal collaborators and not to or for them. And so thank you.
Yeah, can I add one thing? Because I recognize the importance of professionals. Professionals have knowledge and experience that we need. And families will recognize that. So I'm not saying we should only have everything done by the families. No. Families have to make the decisions, so we have to leave the decision-making there. And they will ask for the expertise of professionals who still are very important. But then you get you get balance in the circle, and that's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask each of you to offer some closing thoughts, things that this audience you think would benefit from hearing based upon your experiences, based upon stories that you've eyewitnessed to in terms of why family is significant. So an example or closing thoughts that you'd like to offer about why family is important. Anyone can begin.
I think families are important because they're the catalyst for change. They're the catalyst for healing. And I think I learned a lot of lessons when I was young in my career, and I brought those all the way up as far as I've gone thus far. And they were important, what family means. One example is when I was a worker years ago, a caseworker, one of my kids, he ran away all the time, and so he called me one day and said, "Miss Wright, I'm hungry." And I said, "Well, where are you?" So I had to go pick him up, and we had a real long talk, and I removed him from his family. I placed him in a foster home, and he had an aunt, but I didn't think she was appropriate, and at the time, because that was my mindset, that was the agency's mindset, I think the aunt was a stripper. But, that's where he wanted to be, and they really had a bond. So he explained that to me, and he wanted to talk to her. And I never really listened to her because of her lifestyle. So I didn't really consider her a candidate for keeping this child. So he said, "I want to see her." So I took him on 8 Mile to the strip club. And she was there, and we had a chance to talk. And I really listened to her, and I saw their bond. And I said to myself, "What are you doing?" So I went back to the office, talked to my manager, and I was like, and they were very skeptical, but I really advocated because I thought, if I go out to the home, if the home is appropriate, can we do that? Now, she needed help, and we were able to place him, and we gave her what she needed, some extra funds to get things, beds and that kind of thing. But the kid was happy there. And the other thing about that, I had the best lamb chops ever at that strip club. But the real important thing, what that taught me, though, seriously, is you can't put your biases or your personal ideas onto our families. If it's somebody that they can trust and they can work with us, that's all that matters. All the other things they don't count. And we have to learn sometimes to see beyond what we learned in the school, and we have to learn from how we navigate amongst our clients. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Thanks. I was thinking of an example. A couple of months ago, we were called by a psychiatrist who was working with children, and he had in his institution a 16-year-old boy, and his parents were very worried, and the professionals were very worried because he had tried, I think, 8 or 9 times to take his own life. He tried to commit suicide, and they were very worried. And their worries got bigger because they said he is refusing any treatment, so he doesn't want to talk to us anymore. And they called us and they said, could you do something for him, because he really needs a plan. So we asked, is it okay for the boy if a coordinator comes? And, well, the boy said, well, okay, he can come. And the coordinator just asked him, who cares for you, who's important? And he said, well, my mother, and actually she's the only one. So the coordinator asked, can I have a conversation with you and your mother? And he asked, the coordinator asked him and his mother the same question, who do you think are worried about you? And the boy said, well, nobody. I mean, when I was little, yes, okay, but now for many years, people stopped caring. That's because I am a difficult person, I have a lot of problems, so I'm not a lot of fun to be around. People don't care anymore. And then the mother said, well, actually, do you remember your Uncle Paul? When you were little, you spent so much time with him, and I think your Uncle Paul cares. And the boy didn't believe it, but it was great for the coordinator that they were together. So the coordinator said, could I call your Uncle Paul? And the boy said, well, you can try. So he called Uncle Paul, and you know what Uncle Paul said? I am so happy that you called me. I've been worried for years, but I didn't know what to do. And I couldn't reach out because I thought, he's in treatment now, so I better stay out. They will know what to do. And I didn't know what to do. I forgot my uncle duties. I'm so happy you reached out for me. And you know what? I'm not the only uncle. There are others. We talk about our nephew together. So could we ask them? The coordinator said, Uncle Paul, please, you ask them. And if you go visit your nephew, please tell him that there are others. And what happened then was beautiful. This uncle went to see his nephew, and he said, do you know there are others who care? And the nephew said, yeah, well, but they will think I must be crazy. They'll think it's terrible what I did. And Uncle Paul said, no, they don't. They love you, and they care about you, and they want to be part of your plan. And when the boy realized this, he realized that he was not alone in this world, and that there were people who cared for him. And that gave him the trust to actually reach out to the people. And step by step, very small steps, they started to make a circle. And the boy was doing better. Of course, not all of his problems were gone. I mean, it doesn't work like that. He still had some problems. But he didn't have to face them alone. And what's so beautiful, the family group asked the professionals for some information, and he talked to Paul, what can I share, what don't you want me to share? So it became a collaboration, to come with the theme, between the family group and the professionals, and they made a plan together, step by step. So my thoughts for us today is, let us really share about the importance of both families and collaboration, and let's start trusting families more and feel the conviction that everybody has a circle, because I really believe that that's true.
What a wonderful experience just hearing these questions and hearing the answers as well. Gosh. I had to give some thought on answering this question because stories are so unique, and I also want to be mindful about confidentiality as well. So I'll say some things broadly. One is that when it comes to, just something important to know, when it comes to trauma and healing trauma, the very first steps are restoring the sense of safety, and that's an embodied sense of safety and an embodied sense of connection. So, just thinking that that's, at the forefront, the very first thing when it comes to healing. I've seen firsthand so many cases where families are such an integral and meaningful part of that, because that's a place where there is familiarity, where there is trust. I've seen a number of situations where people have become estranged, and I think those are the family matters situations that come to the forefront of my mind. Could be someone has a psychotic break and becomes homeless, or someone goes across the country, or becomes part of a cult, or financial, mental health. And I've seen so many situations where that person who estranged was in a situation where they were just alone, and having families come and surround them. If by some miracle they can get in touch, because oftentimes they don't. They lose touch and they're not able to get in touch. But if they can come to someone who says, who's important to you, who do you know, and get permission. Like, I've seen families travel long distances to be with that person who was lost. And yes, they still do have problems, but they don't have to have those face the world and their internal and external problems alone. And I think that is just an inherent part of our species. We're a social species. And we're here to, how to say it so plainly? We're here to love one another. Like, that's what it's about. I think that's why that is why family matters, and I've seen it happen again and again. People be put in healing situations from being in a place that's alone.
Thank you. So in many respects, what you've heard us talk about is how, as social scientists in a variety of fields, we can benefit from families helping us to rebuild the societies that each of us are working hard to strengthen. What we also thought about as a panel, as we were preparing, is really to challenge each of us on the stage, and each of those of you who are here today, because you want to be here, to think about how can you also work with families from the onset of creating new ideas, new visions for your societies. So for those of you who are here in housing, as you think about a new development, ask yourselves, who are the families that should be at the table as we develop and create this new housing space? For those of you who are in criminal justice, and you're thinking about task force, think about who are the families, who are the young people that should be at the table as we begin to launch this task force. Not because they're an afterthought, but because their voice is critical for us to develop the infrastructure that we need to prevent them from coming into the justice system in the first place. For those of you who are here in education, and you are striving to decrease the expulsion of young people, begin to think about which young people do we need at the table right now, including those who have been expelled, because they have a solid voice and an experience that is critical to prevent others from walking in that same pathway in that journey. And so when you think about Family Matters, think about them in a preventative fashion as well as in a rebuilding fashion. And so as our panel draws to a conclusion, we wanted to begin with the Native American quote and end with one as well. Before I give the quote, our hope this morning is that you have begun to think about the importance of family beyond the social sphere that you and I know biologically or through marriage or through genetics, but a family of loved ones to whom you and I are accountable and to whom the families that you work with are accountable. We hope that through this discussion, we've challenged ourselves to be accountable for elevating the voices of families in our community. And let's consider how families' voices should serve as catalysts to launch new movements, new approaches in thinking in our societies. So finally, the Native American quote reads, "I am accountable to restore the strength of my family. To do this, I will nurture our family's spiritual, cultural, and social health. I will demonstrate trust, respect, honor, and discipline, but mostly, I will be consistent in whatever I do with them." Thank you for being a wonderful audience, and please thank our panelists.
Again, we want to thank this amazing team for their collective wisdom and what they've shared this morning. Now, we are going to do something that I can't remember a conference that I've gone to where this happens. Normally you have a great presenter or a panel, and then we clap and everybody gets up and goes to the next thing. We're not going to the next thing just yet. We are going to have a time of reflection. Many of you are new. Within restorative practice, we have a thing called listening circles. What a listening circle is, an opportunity for people who have had a shared experience to be able to share how they've been impacted by what they've seen or heard. And so we want to do that and create table discussions where you are right now. So these are the questions that we have for you to reflect on. One, share one thing that stood out for you during this discussion. What did you just hear that resonated with you? Second, one thing this discussion inspired me to consider doing. We're hoping that something you heard is priming the pump for how you can be impactful back in your community. And then we want to challenge you to have a plan. You know, the thing I think I want to do in order to do it restoratively, who do I need to bring together to engage in that conversation? Is it an individual, an organization, and when am I going to do it by? So we want you to make a commitment to yourself and share that at your table. Now, a listening circle is an opportunity to be heard and an opportunity to share. A listening circle is not a debate, right? We are not going to boil the ocean in the next 30 minutes. This is an opportunity for you to be heard and for others to share. We've allocated about 30 minutes, so you know that's not a lot of time with 10 people at the table, right? So I want to offer a couple of norms for your conversation. One, we're not debating, you share. Two, when the other folks are speaking, listen to learn. And finally, I would say watch your airtime, right? I don't know, some of us, 30 minutes is just time for me to clear my throat. Right? And some of you others are out there, just keep looking at me. You know, if you know the people around your table, don't look at them, don't punch anybody. All right? So keep it as explicit as possible, but also short, okay? We'll have a lot of time to communicate. So, again, what stood out in this panel discussion? What did you hear that resonated with you? Two, what possibility are you considering as a result of that? And one step you would need to take in order to put that plan into place. Are we clear? Are we clear? All right. Go ahead and have your discussion at your table.